talk about cannabis for a second.
Okay.
So San Francisco and the Bay Area, and it was early in the days was an innovator in policy around cannabis. Certainly Colorado and other places innovated faster or progressed faster. What's happening in that world as it relates to criminal justice?
Yeah.
What do you see on the horizon? Anything interesting there to share?
I think in this November 16, we'll probably see a statewide ballot measure around legalization. There were several competing to get on the ballot. There have been several iterations of that in past ballots that haven't made it, or where they've competed themselves out of the marketplace, as it were. But I think this November we'll see one. There's already talk in Sacramento around regulating, so I think we're moving that way.
For recreational.
Anyways, for recreational purposes.
And what's the DA, or I don't know if you can talk about it, what's generally the viewpoint of those in power here?
We're kind of it's sort of decriminalized in San Francisco, quite honestly. I mean, unless somebody's engaged in other dangerous activity and marijuana is attached to that, it's very unlikely. Certainly somebody with a joint in their pocket, the police are very unlikely to arrest and bring to us. We're very unlikely to prosecute that. Unless it's something that's a habitual problem in a neighborhood or a community. Like sometimes there's people on Hippie Hill and the parents complain that there's a lot of drug transactions happening while their children are playing. Those are things where the police will get likely to get more engaged, but the average person, I think you experience it when you walk down the street. The smell is sort of widely noticeable, and that's just, we've kind of just let that go as a community.
Okay, so this is a kind of a random question, just from reading a lot of news on the internet. Have you seen any of this where by legalization of some things, the gangs that come from other places or that are pushing, that have an economy here, will start just pushing more dangerous things? Have you seen that? I've seen some articles in LA that there's the gangs are losing all this money on marijuana. And so now they're pushing meth-like products to create a new business. Meaning are there concerns about legalization that have a bigger repercussion because of the economics involved?
I think you can't underestimate how many economies are driven by illicit drugs and what people will do to maintain the wealth they create around that. I don't think any state should go into it blindly or naively thinking no big deal here, it's just like alcohol. These are different times. So I do think governments have to be wise about how they go about legalization, and I think you need to be mindful about what else is available. Now, as we've reduced punishments around those harder drugs, the expectation is that we will move more to a treatment model for those, right? That nobody is saying, rampant use of heavy drugs is a good thing for an individual. Anyone that's had that experience in their family or their community knows that's not the case. What we're saying is jail doesn't change that behavior, right? Giving somebody a felony conviction and saying you now need to spend 2 years in state prison so you can learn not to use drugs does not work. Right? We've established that. Every statistic tells us that does not work. Now, treatment is not a silver bullet either. It's a long road to recovery for people, but it is a better path. It's a more humane path than using jails. And I think when you go to legalization of any substance, you've got to think about what are those other social supports and those other regulations you're going to put in place to keep people safe.
Are they up to par? Are people spending as much time on the services, the social services, as they are on the legalization efforts?
No, and I think places like Oregon and Colorado are starting to figure out what to do around that, right? There's going to be a lot of questions around edibles, right? How do you now help people understand the dosage of that? What's a safe amount to consume and drive a vehicle, right? How will we test that person to be sure that they had too much in their system at the moment that they were driving a vehicle?
Yeah.
What was so intoxicating that it changed the nature of what you did when you got into a fight or you had a sexual encounter, right? There's so many things that will be implicated by that need to be thought through, not just from a criminal justice standpoint, but from a what will we as a society tolerate with that?
Are there have you guys thought about like a breathalyzer for these things? And it must be something that's coming up now, right?
It's tougher. It's much tougher with marijuana because you can't. With alcohol, you can tell sort of when it's in the system, how long it's in the system. You can't use the exact same device for marijuana, right? So even now, currently people get stopped for DUIs and they'll have both weed and alcohol, right? And then figuring out how much they were impaired by the weed versus the alcohol, the weed is much harder for us to tell.
Sounds like a hardware startup idea.
Right.
Work on that. We may have some people that can work on that. Okay, good. I just wanted to mix it up a little bit there. Question from Stacy was, what is the DA's viewpoint on the homelessness issue and the challenges? And based on her experience, her husband is a paramedic, and sort of what he's gone through dealing with the homeless problem. Like, how are you guys dealing with that? Is that right?
Correct.
Yeah. It's it's on everyone's mind here. Our role is quite limited. Most of those folks don't end up arrested with a police report attached that comes to us for a prosecution. But what we have tried to do, because it is still a huge public safety issue and it is a huge quality of life issue for everybody in the city, all of us, right, whether you're working at home, is really try to look around the country and bring ideas that other communities have tried. And so what we did about 4 years ago, we came across a program in Seattle called LEAD, and it is essentially what Seattle did was they trained all of their police officers that you can give people an opportunity to go to treatment or jail at the moment that you encounter them. And oftentimes that moment is it's a stark opportunity, right? It's not going to happen in every moment, but you can say to somebody, here's your choices. I can write this up and we can go to the jail and I can give this to the DA and we can talk about that. Or I can take you immediately to treatment. And they've been engaged in that for years and had a lot of success around it. So we thought, if it works in Seattle, that seems like something we should experiment with. It suits our sort of esprit de corps in San Francisco to try a treatment first model. It resonated with the DA as something that feels like an actual solution to a problem, right? Because even when those people come to us, what we have to offer is not what people need, right? People need help, and we're like, well, we can show you how mad we are at you really well. Like, we can do that over and over again, but that isn't what people need in that moment. And our options are limited. We don't control the service dollars. We can just refer somebody to a program, then there's a waiting list for the program, then the person loses interest in the program, and then they come back on a new case, and we just go like this, right? Around and around. We waste a lot of resources, which is why the police in the first place don't often arrest them, because they think we're just going to all waste our time here. So we propose this idea of LEAD, and we created a sentencing commission here in San Francisco where we have all of the criminal justice partners come around the table and we talk about what are the big issues we're dealing with, how are we all working on them, are there things we can be doing together. And this is one of the ideas the DA brought to the table. And we got early buy-in from public health and other people, and the police was a little bit hesitant to do it, and they were concerned about whether it was going to work or deal with the issue. So we spent about the last 3 years, we flew them to Seattle. We got a grant to fly them to Seattle to go see the program, to meet with the police counterparts there. And so now over these last couple of years, I think we've been able to persuade them that it's a good idea. And we're about to launch that program both with the San Francisco Police Department and with BART, so that when they encounter somebody, they can take them immediately to a sobering center and a place to go kind of just like, right, get a little bit better and hopefully make a better decision, and then we won't prosecute the case if they're able to take the treatment option. So we're hopeful that that will provide some relief. It will be small. It's not going to, like, tomorrow resolve the issues we have here, but I think that's the role, right? Like, even if in a situation like that where our role is limited, there's still an opportunity to be a thought partner and a value add to solving the problem. And I guess in office, that's what we're trying to do is, well, here's what we're seeing when we're out in the world. The DA is, seen as a reformer and an innovator, so he gets invited to lots of places, and we go and we listen, right? Because we don't have every great idea in San Francisco. They're not all born and nurtured here. Other people are smart and come up with good ideas, so we try to steal those and recreate them and make them our own where we can.
Sampling, dude. It's like
exactly, yeah, right.
Take a beat.
Why not?
The question was around break-ins.
Yeah.
High number, 70,000?
26,070 a day.
70 break-ins a day in San Francisco. What are you guys doing
Car break-ins.
to work on
Right.
that?
Yeah, I know. Familiar, very familiar.
How many times has your car been broken into?
No, I haven't. I've been
Oh, nice. Okay.
fortunate. So I think the police department is working on some of their own campaigns, really trying to encourage people to keep things out of view, don't leave things in your car. We've engaged in a few efforts with them and a couple on our own. So about 2 years ago, we started a crime strategies unit in our office with the idea that what we wanted to do was focus the majority of our resources on the most problematic people instead of just focusing on whoever we get from the police department, right? Because sometimes that's not who we're really worried about, right? And an obvious, easy way to plug into that is drug dealing, right? We could arrest and prosecute the guy on the corner for the rest of our careers. And he will either be there or his replacement will be there the following week to make sure that drugs are sold on that corner to the people that are waiting to buy drugs there. Or we can go higher up in that process and look for the people that are bringing that massive quantity to our community and work with the FBI and other partners to really get at the root cause of what's bringing that to our community. So the same is true around other types of crime. So there's some people that break into cars that are desperate for money, for drugs, or for other things that will do it one time. That person is less concerning to us than the person that's like, it's Thursday, I hit up 3rd Street, right? And I break every window on 3rd Street and I take all of this and I take it over to 6th and Market, which if you don't know is where everybody fences their goods, so that it can be sold at the flea markets all over the community, and there goes your leather jacket or your laptop or whatever.
6th and Market?
6th and Market.
Okay. I need a leather jacket.
That's where things get That's where you go sell your things to the fencer, who then takes them to like the Ashby Flea Market or to the Laney College Flea Market, and they get resold. So you as an individual can try to keep things out of view, but what we're trying to do is figure out who those people are that are making it a job to go and break into every car. And so with the unit that we created, we now have DAs and crime analysts. And what we have them do is they look at all the reports. This is what the police officers don't have time to do because they just respond to the call and then they go to the next call, right? So we said we have the benefit of being lawyers and sitting at our desks instead of being in squad cars. So what we can do with our time is try to find the connections, right? And so we try to connect the unsolved 6 robberies that happened before the one where somebody got caught and see, like, is this the same person? Can we connect those? Can we find a way to string those cases together in a way that's more compelling to a judge and to obviously brings more consequences to the individual? So I think the crime strategies unit is an important strategy, 1 for car break-ins, but 2 for bigger kind of crime issues we have in the city. And then it's really trying to work with the judges to make sure they understand that this is a huge impact for people in the community, because that's less obvious, right? The challenge you have in a courtroom is that there'll be a calendar of items for the day. One could be a sexual assault of a child. The next will be a car break-in. The next will be, right? And so raising the profile of what an individual experiences around a property crime can be challenging in the context of really serious violent crimes against people. And how do we try to get the attention that's warranted by those cases can be tough. So we've tried to really engage the community and ask the community to attend when there's an individual that we know, this is somebody that we think we can connect to 60 car break-ins. It'd be good if you could come and talk about what it has been like in your neighborhood to have car break-ins 3, 5, and 10 times during a week, because that isn't something we can relay during the proceedings, but in a community impact statement can be voiced to the judge in ways that are usually more effective.